To make the homemade noodles, you will need the following ingredients. 1 cup of flour, 1 egg beaten, 2 tablespoons of milk, half a teaspoon of salt, and 2 32-ounce containers of chicken broth. Pour all of the chicken broth into a pot and turn the heat on to get it warm. Combine the eggs, salt, and milk in a bowl and then beat the egg. You'll see that there are 2 eggs here because we're making a double batch, but you combine all that stuff in a bowl and beat it up. Put the flour in a large mixing bowl and then add the egg mixture to it. And then once it's all together in the mixing bowl, you knead it together with your fingers and hands and maybe a spoon to form a stiff dough. Once your dough looks like this, let it sit for 20 minutes. Then you use a sifter to make a layer of flour on a flat surface. Take the dough ball, put it on the flour, sprinkle just a very light dusting of flour on top of it, and then start rolling it out with the goal being to get it into a big flat sheet. And as you roll it and it gets flatter, you can keep sprinkling fresh flour so it doesn't stick to the rolling pin. As it gets flatter and wider, you can flip it over, put flour on top, and then continue rolling it out. As it gets wider, you flip it over halfway and then flour underneath it and flour the back side, and do the same with the other side. So once you get it as flat as a noodle, start flouring the surface and then folding as so. Roll it up. Add flour as you roll. While your dough roll is on a cutting board, reflour the surface because you're going to be spreading out, unrolling the noodles, the thin noodle strips, onto that flour area. Take a knife and start making slices as thin as a fettuccine noodle, roughly. Just do this for the entire roll. When you're done slicing, you'll have something that looks like this. Then you take each slice and start unraveling them. It doesn't have to be neat. Some pieces will be long, some will break up into smaller pieces, but you just start unraveling them and laying them out on the flour. And you do that with the whole thing until you have a whole big surface filled with noodles. When you're done unfolding all the slices of noodles, you'll have a surface that looks like this. Just lay them out. Doesn't have to be neat. They can be on top of each other. Break them up, short, long, whatever. But you got a whole surface that looks like this. And ideally, you let them sit like this and dry overnight. So when you wake up, they'll be stiff and crisp. That's the goal. However, in a crunch, if you don't have time or don't want to, they don't have to dry. You can take them immediately after unrolling them like this and put them right in the pot of broth. So when the broth by itself is at a very low rolling boil, it's ready to put the noodles in. So when you do that, put them in just a few at a time, a small handful at a time to avoid a big splash up of the boiling broth, and put them all in. And once they're all in, keep it at a very low rolling boil and stir them occasionally. As far as how long to cook them, the recipe says cook until tender. What we usually do is 10-15 minutes up to a half hour, and tasting one every few minutes to make sure that it's a good consistency, a good texture, and it's not too doughy. If you want a better guideline, cook them until they're perfect. That's perfect. So after it's been boiling for a little bit, add 1/8 of a teaspoon of black pepper and stir it in. If you like things more peppery, add more, but 1/8 of a teaspoon should be about right.
Per batch.
Per batch. We put 1/4 teaspoon in because we did a double batch, which is perfect. And when you serve it, make sure you get plenty of the broth. Noodle soup.